Hello and welcome to the SETI Live. My name is Bettina Fauger. I'm the director of the SETI Institute's Artisan Residence Program. Today we're going to ponder an intriguing question. If we were to send a message into the distant future, what message would we send? My guest today has a few ideas about that. Ruben Polendo, the founding artistic director of the experimental theater company Theater Me Too, has created the fascinating project Utopian Hotline. It is an interactive theater performance, a vinyl record, and an actual telephone hotline that is promoting people to leave messages to the future. We'll discuss how this project came to be, what messages our SETI Institute scientists would send into the future, and let you know how you too can participate. Before I introduce our guests, I would like to welcome all our viewers who are joining us from around the world on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, and on Twitch. Please tell us in the chat where you're joining us from. And if you have questions for Ruben, please put those in the comments and we will get to those at the end of our discussion. Now let me introduce our guest. Ruben Polendo is the founding artistic director of the Brooklyn-based theater Me Too. He has directed, curated, and written a great many of Theater Me Too's works, which have premiered in theaters internationally and in the United States. His plays have been presented in Egypt, Chile, Poland, Lebanon, Mexico, Mongolia, India, and Thailand, to name a few. Among his many awards and recognitions are the prestigious MAP Fund Grant, the Rolex Protégé Arts Initiative, and the New York Cultural Development Fund National Endowment for the Arts. Currently, Ruben is the chair of the undergraduate drama at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, and he continues to create, develop, and present work around the world. Welcome, Ruben.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, and a big welcome to everybody joining. I'm seeing already the names of locations people are at, and it's thrilling to reach so many individuals. So thank you, Bettina.
Well, thank you for joining us. I've been looking forward to speaking to you about this wonderful project all week. So tell us a little bit what it's about and just give us an overview of Utopian Hotline.
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit of a personal framework for 2 seconds, which I think will link directly to the project. So as Bettina mentioned, I am a theater director, founding artistic director of Theater Me Too. And one of the best ways to understand Theater Me Too is the fact that my own training and my undergraduate and graduate training is actually not in the arts, but it's in science, a different kind of science than the work SETI is doing. But I was trained as a biochemist. So when I started engaging in my work as an artist, which was later in my graduate school time, and then started formally training as a theater maker in a graduate program towards that field, my only series of tools that I had were really those of a scientist. And so I approached theater and art making really from the space of a laboratory, of a space of exploration, of interrogation, and of innovation. And it's really here where I gathered my company, which is really best thought of as an artistic laboratory, right? Our commitment is to push the boundaries of theater, not only how it's made and performed, but really what the process is of engaging in theater. And so for us, theater is really a mode of research and of inquiry. It's a tool set to really delve into big questions. We've, as you mentioned, developed many projects. And of course, our most recent one is Utopian Hotline. And for us, the question that we're interested in, it's really quite a capacious one. And it's really a consideration of the future. It goes without saying that the last year and a half almost.
Oh, you're a little bit frozen. But this is like the Utopian Hotline really coming from the future. So there's a little bit of a time lag.
Hopefully I'm unfrozen now.
Yes, you're
Did you
good
get me
now.
back now? Okay. The goal really was to invite us during this moment of really turmoil to consider the future, to actually consider what is the future that we're building. So we started really with a very simple research action, which is creating a hotline, a telephone line that invited the question of what do you imagine to be a more perfect future? And we got an incredible outpouring of responses from all over the country, and in fact, all over the world, of individuals really dreaming and thinking, imagining, being playful. Some of them put their children on the phone. It was really a kind of exciting space. And that really became the seed of the question. It became then imperative for us to really then be in conversation with individuals whose entire field is really a consideration of the future. And this is what started leading to more formal partnerships, including with SETI, who has been an incredible partner in this piece, and to really have a really rich access to leaders in the field of science, of astronomy, of all sorts of related fields that look towards the future, whether on this planet or otherwise. And boy, have we had incredible conversations with some of the leaders that SETI has connected us to. And their words and their ideas really started folding into these voicemails that we continue to receive, and created this a piece that we've premiered, right? And the piece, as you mentioned, has these different access points. First and foremost, the hotline. And I would invite everybody on this call to call the hotline to tell us your dreams of the future, how you imagine a more perfect future from wherever you are. I see on the chat people from Caroline, Marseille, and Oklahoma, and Newcastle, Mexico. I'm from Mexico, so I'm very moved by that. Sweden. We'd love to hear from you. And as we travel through this chat, I'll make sure the number pops up. That's one access point. We've taken the voicemails that have come thus far to create two art spaces. One is to musicalize and really theatricalize those thoughts, and we've created a vinyl record.
A little bit frozen again. So let me ask you while I have a moment. So a vinyl record, a little bit like the golden record, I guess, that went out with the probes.
That's right. For us, I mean, if you're talking about messages about the future, it's impossible not to think of the golden record, right? And that incredible experience. And we were able to be in conversation with several folks involved in that to consider exactly that. And so that shaped the idea of a record, of creating a record, a document that archives this process. And then the last, of course, is the performance, which is happening here in Brooklyn in our theater space. It's a large art warehouse we've created. And it invites a group of 12 individuals to come as audiences and sit in the performance of these voicemails, which is a really exciting prospect. The last that I'll add is we also have an ability for you to access the archive of voicemails. We have a digital archive that you can go on, and it's this beautiful artwork where you actually travel by way of an avatar, which is this little kind of space person that travels through this whole landscape, and you see all these phone booths, and you can hear all the voicemails we've got. So the hope is to have everyone access the work in as many ways as possible.
I mean, that is fantastic. And it really speaks to the kind of the fact that you're more than a theater. When people hear theater, they think dark room, you're sitting quietly in a chair, no talking, and you're looking ahead of you, and there's a red curtain on the stage. This is not at all what you're about, right? This is all very sort of research-based and experimental.
That's right. And it's about pushing the boundaries, right? It's about looking at this as a creative space of inquiry, and also to bring voices together, right? To bring not only the voicemails we've gotten, not only the scientists and the leaders we've spoken through by way of SETI, but also we did interviews with children who are going to inherit the future, right? And so they're also mixed into that. And our belief is that art and theater can hold all of these realities and invite us to be in conversation with that. If I may, Bettina, I'll do a tiny little screen share here to give you a sense of what the production work looks.
Yeah. Screen share is a great idea. It's always good to have visuals, and I know you even have, I think, photos and videos of the production.
That's right. And so this is I think if it came through, you see an image, and you're really invited to sit around this table and considering. You see all these recording devices that we use to play the interviews and to play all of the work that's been archived. I'll share a couple more if I may, because I think it'll give you a little sense of the dynamicism of the piece, right? The piece engages technology really richly, projections, all sorts of technological uses of cameras in the actual performance. And so you're really both seeing the work as we've archived it, but also the process of archiving. And really it's a meditation on the future. I'll show one other image while we're here, because I think it's about the sweetest thing ever. If you are able to go onto the archive, to access it, this is what you will see. So this is our little space person. And you see this little phone booth, and you see in the background tons of phone booths. So you can actually manipulate that little space explorer to travel through this space, which will send you from phone booth to phone booth, hearing all of the hundreds of voicemails that we've gotten. And I find them incredibly moving as we travel through this project.
I mean, this is really fantastic. And I think this links to a question that I had about how you managed to do that during the pandemic. Because I guess, did this force you to consider more of the digital environment as you were building this project?
That's right. As a company, we feel very fortunate because technology and multiple platforms had always been part of our work. But of course, the pandemic challenged how we came together as a community. And this project was really born in the middle of, really at the height of the pandemic. And so it really brought us into different modes of collaborating and to really consider the other platforms not as substitutes for performance, but actually as different points of access, right? I actually want my parents in Mexico, my 94-year-old parents in Mexico, to experience this project.
Yeah, and they can because you created like this virtual world where you can sort of navigate around and listen to everybody's voices, which is absolutely wonderful.
That's right. And also it's worth noting the music you can also access on streaming platforms, on Spotify and Apple Music, so you can hear the music from the piece as well.
That's wonderful. So I'm interested in what our SETI scientists had to say, because you did interview quite a few of them.
Yes.
Any interesting insights?
Yes, I will say that all of the scientists that we spoke to not only were brilliant, but really spoke to me. They sounded like artists. We spoke for long periods of time about theories and ideas and equations and explorations and their research. But when prompted with the question of what would we send, right, out into space, what message would it be if we were looking at messages as we consider the future? All of their answers were so human by their own kind of articulation, right? So we have this incredible scientist, Lika Guhakarta, who tells us that what we should send is poetry, lots and lots of poetry, right? Which was so moving to hear from a colleague in a whole other field, right? We spoke to folks who really felt that we should send simply a photograph of an everyday moment, right? And these really kind of poetic spaces as we dream of the future. Again and again, I think a resounding idea from all of the folks we spoke to is that the future is right now. It's happening right now. It's not, we can consider it certainly 100, 1,000, many years from now, but we're shaping it right now. And that became really inspiring and a really kind of a tribute to the human spirit, which was really meaningful.
That's actually very beautiful philosophical points, that we're thinking of the future as something that won't touch us, that is so far away, that it's like we compartmentalize it, that it's something else. But what you're doing is you're creating this thread between now, where we are, and that the future is more like a sliding scale, where it starts actually next week, it starts the next moment, but it also can last 100,000 years. This is a question of perspective. And I want to take a moment. You already mentioned a couple of places where people are listening from. We really have a global audience, like Brazil, Italy, of course, Palo Alto around the corner, Port Huron, Canada, Mozambique, which is fantastic. Hello, Mozambique, Spain, Connecticut, Sweden. Hello, Sweden, and Texas, London. And we have a question actually that is maybe quite good to fold in right now. How would the future understand us? I mean, this is a question that is both technical, but also in terms of like how we speak language-wise. There's I think this sort of vocabulary drift, and are these kind of considerations you were discussing as well?
Definitely. We had the great privilege of speaking through a great introduction from you all with Dr. Frank Drake, who of course is one of the leading minds in the golden record. And this is a question that we asked him. And it was so interesting to hear in his very wise tone that in fact, our job, if we are considering messaging, is really a consideration of what best reflects us, right? But what is out of our control is how that will be read. And that in many ways, that we cannot have an impact or control about that. We want to give as much legibility and tools, but a combination of time and space and a whole host of other considerations is really going to leave that to its own agency. There's, of course, the beautiful conversation that the committee who made the golden record concluded, which is the possibility that maybe way down, hundreds of thousands of years from now, the ones that will find the golden record is us, that it will actually come back to us as humanity. And that in fact, that's one of the most meaningful things of how we communicate with each other too.
Well, yeah, that's what, because you froze a little bit of frozen again. I think this is a beautiful thought, because we are seeing ourselves as space explorers as well. So maybe we may actually travel ahead of the golden record, settle somewhere, and suddenly this thing arrives, and then it's more like a time capsule.
Right.
I think it's already a time capsule, really, isn't it?
That's right. Well, and in fact, that's something also a lot of the scientists we spoke to acknowledge, that, by definition, the moment you complete that message, we keep moving into the future. And so that message wants to stay alive and evolving. And and again, there's this consideration of time. And also that's another big motif that came up, was time, our belief on time, our thoughts on time, philosophies on time, how the experience of time changes. So it's a rich conversation. I hope folks are able to visit the archive or come see the show or engage in the music and the sounds, because it really gets the mind and the heart going.
So while we're on the topic of Voyager, a question came in that asked, how did anyone think the message on Voyager would be understood? What about the utopian hotline messages? So that's kind of related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, please, for anyone on this call who knows and has done any research into the golden record, they spend hours and hours discussing that question, right? As much as Dr. Frank Drake said, it's beyond their control. That was a big part of it, which is why it sent in what they considered was a fairly rudimentary technology, which is essentially a vinyl grooved record. They sent a stylus, it has instructions, it has all these markers of legibility, and those are to be considered, right? For us, we're not yet ready to send the messages to space. We're at the moment actually sitting and inviting us to meditate on how we as communities come together and dream of the future. And that's really what the art making is about. Yeah.
I mean, that's one interesting comment in the comment section. Would we expect binary code? I mean, rather than sending a physical object, it should just be zeros and ones. I mean, this is how we right now receiving information from all the probes that we're sending out, to Mars and beyond the solar system even.
Yeah, another really remarkable proposal that we received from one of the scientists that we interviewed was DNA. The fact that DNA is an incredibly compressed information module, and in many ways carries a whole host of histories of what the human experience is, if our focus is to communicate that, right? The argument, of course, is that there's a whole host of cultural, behavioral, and social things that it may or may not communicate, but it was a really interesting model. And the notion that it is legible, of course, comes into question.
Right. So I just want to take a second to describe a little bit the actual performance, because I want you to talk about the pink carpet and
yes.
and why you made it not like a theater we're thinking of, like a big event, but I guess because of Corona and because of the intimacy of the project, you decided to go another way.
We did. So if I may, I'm going to share this video as I speak, and it'll give you a little sense of what the performance looks like. So for us, it was important to acknowledge that coming back into a space of viewing and experiencing theater there's a restart that's happening. And so certainly here in New York and other places of the world, there's a lot of concern. And so we wanted to make sure that it was a place that felt safe, that felt like you could come into community, but still feel like you could focus on the work, and you're seeing some images. And so for us, it became about a small number of performers, or 4 of them. It also became about having a small group of audiences. So we selected to have 12 who actually come into the space. And the aesthetics are a very interesting one. You come into this warehouse that has been retrofitted to be this art space. The entire ground is covered in this really beautiful pink carpet with this long white table.
You're a little bit frozen, but I just want to say, I saw as you were setting up, we were talking intermittently about, how things are going. And I think you were like in the middle of sort of setting up your space, and everybody was kind of rolling around on this carpet. It looks really lush. So for anyone who's in Brooklyn and wants to experience this, just for that, I would go. Of course, I want to also hear all the Utopian hotline things, but I just love how you sort of really creating not just an audible experience, but also like a tactile experience and just redefining the space.
It really is. And we also, the entire piece is experienced by headphones. So you wear headphones as an audience member, and the hope was to engage in a kind of aural space of memory. I see one of the questions somebody asked if there's a possibility of sending messages by way of light. And under the same token, we actually considered the idea in a conversation about how does one sense sound, right? That's another kind of mode of transfer that may be legible. And so these are really rich questions.
Yeah, actually, since we, it's time to go to our questions. And I could talk to you, frankly, all day about this. So, but I just want to sort of, make sure that we get enough time for questions. Before I do this, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that the SETI Institute is a nonprofit organization, and it's due to contributions from viewers like you that these SETI Lives and other outreach projects are possible. So if you would like to support us, please consider going to SETI.org and hit donate. Thank you so much. So let's get back and really dig into questions. There was an interesting comment about sending art instead, like visual art instead of language, because right now this is more performative. So as with hieroglyphics and cave paintings, visual representation seems to be the way to communicate to the future. A really good point. So any ideas of maybe introducing a visual art component?
I think, for us as a theater company, we're not very interested in the divisions of, visual art and filmmaking and theater and music. For us, it's art making, right? And so I do think, and again, a lot of the scientists we spoke to landed on this, that there's something about art that can capture so much, right? Either imagistically or sound wise. And it as a tool of communication is so vital, and it's such a part of the human experience. Then to bridge kind of the scientific and the artistic as a mode of communication, to me is ideal. And in many ways, it's what we're trying to do with this project.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what I alluded to earlier. It's you listen and you experience the performance, but that is also a visual act. Plus, you experience the space, and so it's that multisensory experience that theater can bring. I think it's really phenomenal. I have a question that sort of popped up in the back of my head. We're just imagining either ourselves receiving the message or somebody like ourselves. Have you considered other species? Like we have, I don't know if you had the opportunity to talk to Lawrence Doyle, who talks to humpback whales. And so any thoughts around sending messages to the future that may, and what that alien presence may look like and how they may perceive our communication?
Yeah, right as you were asking that question, Lawrence Doyle came to mind. We had a multi-hour conversation. We could not stop talking about this because his research actually looks at different patterns of communication in different species and what are the overlaps, right? That's a very clumsy summary, so that there can be this kind of trans-species communication, and the idea of considering that so that we can do a lot of research on this planet about those bridges of communication as.
So since you're frozen again, you should absolutely check out Lawrence Doyle. I know he has done a lot of interviews, and on the SETI YouTube channel, just Google him, and he does phenomenal work and communicating with other species, and mostly whales. So yeah, sorry, we can continue.
No, my apologies for the technology, but he really feels that there's some really meaningful research and exercises that we can do here in that kind of trans-species, and that there's a way that we've unpacked an imagined narrative where communication beyond this planet is going to be, there'll be a species link, when in fact there may not be. It may be an altogether different species, even within how we define species, right? So he's fascinating. Yes, I would underline checking out any of his talks online. He's a brilliant mind.
Yes, yeah, they're just about language in general and what that means, and you'll find that absolutely fascinating. And I know that Lawrence is also looking at quantum computing, which links to another question. Do you guys think of sending messages through math? Since I believe math and geometry is universal to communicate.
Well, yes, but we take it one step further and argue that one of the most elegant manifestations of math is music, right? The music's quite mathematical. And so that, for us, again, bridges a space that is, I'll call it scientific, though, between mathematics and music, and absolutely agree with that. I do want to highlight that an interesting point that Lawrence brought up was creating some system in which we can individually send messages out in the way the Golden Record did, but almost like these galactic tweets, he calls them. And I thought that was so fascinating, under the idea not only to send them intentionally out, but also you might want to send them to somebody, 400 years from now, and so that it would have a circulatory pattern. And that, again, that blew our minds as we considered messaging and the future.
Yeah, and talking about music, I remember Seth Shostak writing a lot about whether aliens would have music and whether that would be a sign of culture, and if this is something that's sort of a unifying factor. Certainly at the AIR program, we have other artists who are dealing with sound and music as well. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I think it's so much about patterns, right? About legible patterns. So we're speaking about binary code, we're speaking about audio information, visual, mathematics, music. So I think it's about patterns that have some kind of legibility, right? And what are the patterns that best represent us? What are those systems? And for me, it would be about sending a multitude. I think when we started this project, I was looking for the message to the future, or the one idea, and realized that the human experience is hinged on plurality, right? That in fact, it's a multitude of messages, it's a multitude of experiences. And so similarly for me, it would be about a multitude of communication patterns. Yes, light, yes, binary, yes, math, yes. And how do we hold it? In many ways, to me, the most meaningful question is not the what do we send, but how? How do we put it all together into some kind of containment? And that's equally a kind of exciting proposal.
Yeah, and I think that what you describe is a really interesting arc, because you start with this question, like, what do we say? And that becomes, how do we say it? What is the time span that we say it in? And all these other questions kind of unfold from that simple thing. We want to send a message into the future. What is that message? And it becomes this much larger conversation, which is,
that's right.
I think any good art project evolves that way. It becomes like all these questions, and then it kind of goes back to like this one question. It's like, it's a multitude of voices. That's just what it is. And you just come and play and enjoy. And I love that your piece is just so interactive, and I can't wait to take the little robot and listen to everybody's. So people can actually, like, I can take my phone and I can call right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find all the information on utopianhotline.com. So look up.
So utopianhotline.com. And I think our communications director, Rebecca, has already put the link in the chat. So you should be able to just click on it. And the phone number to call is right on there. So what would you want people to talk about when they
future.
The future. They want for the future.
Really, it's an invitation to imagine the future. It could be aspirational, a hope, a worry. It could be intergalactic. It's about the future. I think as a greater action, I think it's so important for us to be in a constant conversation about how we imagine the future. not just how we dream it and hopes, but actually what do we imagine and what are we working towards? And boy, speaking to the scientists at SETI, they are working towards the future, which is really, really great.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And sort of, yes, time and space, right, is what we're working at SETI, and also how that interconnects, and it's kind of the same thing in any case.
That's right.
Talking about time, you are planning for, I think, next year to take all this on the road as well?
That's right. Yeah, as early as later in the fall, the performance part will begin to travel to different parts of the country, different parts of the world. So we hope as many communities can join us, can sit in the performance space. But again, all these parts work separately. So if you can't see the performance, check out the archive, check out the music. But hopefully, we'll come to a community near you. And we've been very fortunate to take our work all over the world, and this project will be no different.
I mean, and it's been just absolutely wonderful to have you part of the Artist in Residence program as a collaborator. Just sort of, our intermittent conversations and just seeing this project develop and all the new questions. And I remember you saying like, oh, we just talked to another SETI scientist. This completely changed how, we're thinking about what it is we're doing. And so that kind of creative process is just a joy to watch. And I'm just so delighted with this outcome. I'm very, very disappointed that I cannot be in Brooklyn in person, but I know that, you're traveling. So, and I will check out all the online interactions that are possible. So Ruben, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us, and all our wonderful people from all over the world who joined us today. I encourage everyone to go to utopianhotline.com, pick up your phones, call the hotline, talk about the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.